Welcome to the first in a series of short videocasts about She-Ra, Archiarch, and this whole world of things that are alive, this universe that we call the Inanimati. In fact, we're calling this little short Unboxing the Inanimati because, you kind of unbox things, and I guess things that are alive is kind of like the ultimate to unbox. Well, if you've seen She-Ra and you saw the Thinking Of video that we also put up, you know that here at CBA, we've been playing around with this idea for a long time and really exploring what this kind of fantasy universe has to offer. And we thought it would be really interesting for you guys to see what we came up with, what we learned along the way, some of the game rules, how it's played, the basics of the universe, etc. Anybody who likes fantasy universes full of depth and some kind of relevance to the real world would probably also like to know, what we found out, what works, what doesn't work. And to begin with, I think we have to talk about the basics of the Inanimati universe, and it's based on make-believe. Theo, who you met in the Thinking Of video, is here to help me run you through this. And well, when it comes to make-believe, Theo, you've got kids. I think you know what I mean.
Kids are great dreamers, and it's easy to imagine that they are born immediately with their mind in a superhero world or in a fantasy magical one, like this. But the truth is that they have their own world of imagination that allows them to play make-believe with objects, and this is really handy and important before they learn a superhero name. Here is my son making a wheat cutting machine out of a folding carpenter's ruler.
Even in a make-believe world, the concept of the Inanimati might seem a little bit surreal. And we designers, we like to know what are the operating principles that we're working with. I mean, even in something in a made-up world. So soon as we were looking into the backstory of Archie and asking why this and why that, you begin to ask yourself, if we live in a world full of stuff and it isn't alive, but their world is kind of the same looking stuff and it is alive, well, which came first, or how did that happen? And of course, that question, you have to go into all kinds of details about, where the universe is made from and who did this and who did that and who did this and stuff like this. And backstories to fill in some of the gaps, characters that you didn't think you needed, but in reality you do because they help explain things. You put it all together and, pretty soon, voila, you've got a world.
A universe, actually. It doesn't really matter if the story is science fiction, a fantasy, or it's about a superhero world. There is always a give and take between elements that you assume comes from the reader experience and elements that are new.
Usually it's all this background and collateral stuff that has to stay very familiar to our own experience. Gravity points down, cups hold liquids, so that even if an alien spacecraft looks strange, because it's rusted and aged, and we have that from our own experience of big machinery, then it has a sort of familiarity about it. And by keeping as much as possible familiar, that lets the different things, like the guys in the tights who can fly around, or the magicians who whip up the spells, that gives them, the space to have free reign.
Maybe that is why the Inanimati are so interesting to me. Everything looks so familiar, but actually there is so little overlapping material. Okay, gravity points down, an arch looks like an arch, and a cup can hold water, but that's basically it. I mean, buildings of stone can move according to the stretching and squashing that the animators use. An egg beater grows up and transmogrify into a lawnmower, and a cup might even lead a revolution.
We talked about objectomy in the Thinking Of film as a way of getting inside the head of the object that you're drawing to really get the most out of its potential, because you see things and think about them the way it does. Now, this is different than if you're, say, drawing superheroes that are based on human anatomy. The guys who draw those have to know an incredible amount about muscles and skeletal things and all these types of dynamics of the sinew and flesh to make it very believable. It's amazing what they know. When you're doing a character like a cement mixer, like Chrome Joe Banji here, and you're trying to give it a more sophisticated character, then you need a different way of seeing.
Which means you sort of have to see like a child. Their imagination see words, while some Inanimati may share some overlaps to superheroes, and some might be closer to a more magical universe. I can say that this is even closer to the make-believe that kids practice when they imagine things being alive. And there are no humans in this make-believe reality, just inanimate object. let's say crazy inanimate object. The suffix mati, it actually means crazy in Italian.
Well, this is really ground floor for us, and we appreciate any ideas on how to improve it, how to embellish it, how to complete the picture.
I don't think we will ever complete it. There is so much to discover, but at least we know some basics. For instance, the rule that there are no eyes, no mouth, no face, no clothes.
Well, okay, that and all the other basics for how to make your own Inanimati on an upcoming episode of Unboxing the Inanimati. You know, maybe next time we'll look at how we went from a feather to Professor Pen. It's really kind of a cool process. Anyway, thanks for watching. Send us your comments. Appreciate that. And until next time, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.